Hey, what is going on, everybody? I hope each and every one of you are having a amazing night so far. Might be tomorrow, depending on when I go ahead and get this particular video up. But what I want to go ahead and talk about first, I want to straighten up this camera here because I look a little crooked, little not straight here. But what I really wanted to go ahead and talk about today is the art of practicing perfection. And the reason I want to talk about it is, of course, I'm part of this awesome community called the Mastermind Family. And the beauty of being a part of this Mastermind Family is being able to speak to a lot of great mentors, a lot of great head coaches at our team. And there's one particular trainer that really taught me something about the art of practicing perfection. Now, what that means is that, as we talked about before, practice doesn't necessarily make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfection. And we have to understand first and foremost what that definition means to us specifically. Now, as we're going throughout this journey, coaching in the financial industry like I'm doing, or it could be whatever your endeavor, whatever your passion is. The idea is that you want to go ahead and practice that particular perfection and what that means to you. It's going to look so different to so many people, especially as you are at your own particular level. Say you're just starting out, right? And for me, I know that I have about a year and 11 months into my own industry, my own trade of financial investing. So I do have my own definitions of what practicing perfect means to me. Now, to somebody else, especially someone who's just starting out, you may not know what that particular perfection is to you, especially if you get started. You're going to have what I like to call, we'll talk about this later, different expectations as you move forward. And that's absolutely perfect. That's absolutely fine. No matter whatever I talk about, I always base this principle, and I love Dean Graziosi when he says this. You got to go ahead and practice that Kaizen. You have to practice one step at a time, one day at a time, one video at a time, one teachable point at a time, and you're going to be able to build up a cumulative knowledge, a cumulative skill that you can go ahead and take with you for the rest of your life. And so what we want to go ahead and talk about is deliberate practice, deliberately practicing your craft, deliberately sharpening your tool belt in order to go ahead and make sure that you're moving forward in the next level of your particular passion. Now, what is that going to go ahead and mean to everybody that's out here? We want to make sure that we become autistes in the art of practicing to perfect. We want to become so great as artists of the art of practicing perfection that we have our own masterpieces that we first create in this particular art. And then as we go forward, that particular art becomes a lot better. That particular way that we practice perfect becomes a lot better. Because again, when you first start out, and I can remember day one of my journey, there was a particular way that I practiced perfection, and just evolving that from what I've done so far right now to the countless videos that I've done in my Forex trading journey, to the interviews that I've done, to now this incredible ClickFunnels journey that I'm a part of. There are several particular pieces of perfection that are now instilled in me that I didn't have back then. That's going to look very similar to you guys as you move forward throughout your own journey, throughout your own craft. Now, the thing about when we practice perfection, right? The problem that we want to avoid is that we want to think that mistakes are going to be the problem as we do this. No, mistakes are not going to be the problem as we do this, because mistakes do come along. Mistakes will still happen. Mistakes we want to go ahead and embrace, because that is a opportunity for us to know, oh, I made that mistake. Now I need to know next time I must get better. And that's perfect when we think about it in that lens. Again, we can always focus on what's wrong. We can always focus on what's right. Tony Robbins. Now, what we need to do is how we go through the practice and how we view perfect practice. That is what we're going to go ahead and make sure that we do. And so when I think about this, right, it's allowing us to make sure that we don't go down the wrong road when it comes to how we practice. Because I'm stubborn. I'm pridefully stubborn. And that is something that I am willing to admit on camera. And so it can work for me in beautiful ways, and it can work for me in terrible ways. What I don't want to happen is that I don't want this to necessarily make me do things in the wrong way. What I don't want to necessarily do is I don't want things to become a point where I'm too narrow visioned, that I'm not willing to open up to other people's feedback, other people's perspective, that can't get the best job done because I'm not listening to what people desire and how I teach. And so that's going to be very important for each and every one of us to understand, like, that is the way that we need to view perfect practice as we move forward. And so some of the points that White Dove said in that particular training that I do want to go ahead and talk about is there's 3 key points. So we're going to break all those down. Number 1, we want to just do the thing. That's probably the most important point. Do the thing, take action, take uncomfortable action, take steps, go step by step. That's number 1. Because what this does, it allows us to be comfortable with practicing our uncomfortability of doing the thing that we love. I go back to my podcast. It was very uncomfortable at first, showing people, oh, this is how I trade. This is how I do the thing. This is how I interview. This is how I'm using this software, ClickFunnels, to build my website. It's very uncomfortable when I was doing it at first, because I'm just like, oh, I'm so new at this. I'm a guinea pig. I'm all these things that are coming into my mind. My inner critic is telling me, this is so new to you. How come you're doing this? Please stop. Don't do this anymore. And again, it just said, no, inner critic, please go away. Just go to the back. I'm good. I got this. So that's number 1, right? We want to take that action, because by taking that action, it allows us to be more comfortable in understanding what we're doing is allowing us to serve the community that we desire to serve a lot better than if we never took that particular action. We don't need to worry about making mistakes in our practice room as we're teaching the craft. Remember, your first version is not going to be your final version. Your first version of your course, your first version of your song, your first version of your podcast, your first version of your YouTube, whatever avenue, vehicle that you want to use, that first version is not going to be the final version. You're going to go through improvements, tweaks. You're going to continue to improve, continue to get better, continue to sharpen what you have already created. So don't be afraid to make those mistakes. In fact, those mistakes are necessary in order for people to really see you went from this, where you started out, to this. And once you go from this, it's like, whoa, you're talking next level stuff right there. And it's perfect. It's awesome. I just spit on my camera. That was a mistake, but I'll improve on that. So we don't want to be afraid of making mistakes in our practice room, right? And we want to detach that moment of being overcritical. And what I mean by that is, I tend to review a lot of my footage. I tend to review a lot of the material that I post out into my coaching verse, if you will. And I have a tendency to really just go in, review my videos, and see where I can do better. And that's basically it. Now, I do get to a point where it's like, I could have covered that just a little bit better. I could have explained how I did that thing just a little bit better. And you're going to find that out too as you go along, or, as you're creating your own thing. It's like, oh, I could have done this a little bit better. Now, the trick is to not be like, oh, dummy, why didn't you, come on, don't do that. And don't hit yourself, by the way. Don't do what I just did right there, okay? Don't take that piece of advice, so don't hit yourself. So what I mean by that is you don't want to get too nitpicky. You don't want to get too in your head about everything. What you do want to do is you would need to go ahead and just see where you're at, notice mistake, accept that mistake, know how you can do better, and that's it. Move on. Understanding you did a fantastic job in doing the first, second, third, fourth, and so on episode, or whatever it is that you create, and just understand that there is room for improvement, and that's all that you need to accept. Now, number 2 is review the thing. And that means also tapping others for help. This goes back to, that review and getting feedback and understanding that, yeah, there are things that I see. And I talked about the analogy with Trent Sheldon. I remember I said I didn't remember that person's name, but it was actually Trent Sheldon. So Trent Sheldon, he was talking about the story at the vision store, eyeglass store with his wife. And his vision wasn't his wife's vision. His wife's vision wasn't his vision. And that's the thing. If you pass along your material for other people to review, remember, people don't see what you don't see, right? And so they're going to interpret what you're doing in a different perspective. Now, there's a difference between people just giving you the business, that negative energy that I talked about at some point a little bit later or earlier into my videos, compared to giving positive feedback, giving constructive criticism, because they're experiencing a particular strength that you're not necessarily talented to be in. We all have different talents. We all have different traits. So someone's going to look at it and say, your video is great, but we could go ahead and do this a little bit better because I got it from this angle. And when we frame it in that perspective, we realize that they're giving us helpful advice. They're using their strengths to help to guide us, give us the advice. So even though that particular strength for them is considered our weakness, we could still take that advice and allow us to build up on our strengths, but also with our weaknesses, we can use the advice from those that have that strength that's considered our weakness to make it better. I know that was a tongue twister right there, but in long story short, other people who are giving us positive feedback because of what their strengths are is definitely helpful. And then number 3 is redoing the thing and being patient with yourself. Understand that in my own journey, I have made mistakes to where it was like, I have to go ahead and restart. I have to go ahead and redo this particular account. I have to go ahead and tweak the strategy a little bit, make it a little bit better, ask people for help, take some advice that I needed at that time. And that's what you're going to go through on your journey as well. Just being able to understand that what you're doing, again, is the first version, the second version, the third version, and so on and so forth is not your final version. That final version, I don't believe ever comes if you're so dedicated that you just continue to grow until, well, we all become dust in the wind. Now, for me, that's going to be about 200 plus years from now. I don't know. So I got a lot of growing to do at that particular point in time. But again, my biggest point is not to get back to seriousness land. The main factor is that it's going to take you a little bit to grow into your highest self. And I don't even believe you'll ever get to your highest self, because you'll always be chasing it, because you'll always be ambitious, because you'll always have bigger goals, because your impact is going to be tremendously huge, that you can't even see what that impact is right now. You can only see what you're seeing right now. But once you've gotten to those other steps, you're going to realize that mountain that you were seeing is actually the backdrop to an even bigger mountain that you get to climb, because of the bigger visions and the bigger goals that you have. So I said I wanted to come back to this particular point, and I want to go ahead and address it and emphasize that your expectations have to fit the level that you're currently at right now. You can't have high expectations where you get down on yourself when you realize it's not as perfect as it's supposed to be. Your expectations are your expectations. You have to understand I'm at this skill level, so this is what my expectations can be. And then when I get better, yes, I can then raise my expectations. And then when I get better, I can raise my expectations. And then when I get better, I can raise my expectations. Think of it like a value ladder. We all have heard the value ladder at the World Summit. For those that were there, you have to start from here. Then you go up because you got a little bit better. And then this is your bar for expectations. Then you get better. The bar goes up a little bit. This is your expectations. Bar goes up again. This is your expectations. And it keeps going. And that's the beautiful thing about making sure that you become an artist of practicing perfection. Because as you practice perfection, as you become that artist, you'll get better in what you love and what you do. And above all, remember this, hashtag perfect practice. You have an amazing rest of your week. Let's crush it. And remember this, be great, be favored, and be the person that you desire and that you're destined to be. Thank you, everybody.